Hello and welcome to State Matters. I'm your host, Matt Muratore. Today, we are going to discuss psoriasis and why state government involvement matters to help the cause. Joining us for that discussion is Jody Quinn, who is living with the disease and helps advocate for others. Jody, thank you so much for joining me today. Appreciate that.
Thank you for having me.
We always start our show is always find out who our guests are. So who is Jody Quinn?
Jody Quinn. Well, originally from Cambridge, Massachusetts resident, lifelong. Moved to Cape Cod when I was in high school, went to Sandwich High School. And then to Cape Cod Community College and Bridgewater State College. I currently live in Plymouth.
Now, what did you take up in college?
I had management and then paralegal at Bridgewater.
Okay, great.
Yes,
Yeah.
yes.
And you live in Plymouth?
I live.
What
I
part of
currently
Plymouth do you
live in
live in?
Plymouth. I live 4 minutes from here. That's
Okay.
how long it took me to get here today.
So where is that near? Because
Right
people
off
outside
of
of the
Route
town
80,
that doesn't
right
know.
off of Route 80.
Oh, you live in West
near-
Plymouth?
Yes, right
Plymouth,
near
great.
Market Basket.
Great, great.
Yes.
So what do you do for work?
I, for the last over 23 years, have been office manager and contract manager for a general mechanical contractor.
Oh, okay.
Yes.
Where?
In Weymouth, Massachusetts.
Oh, great,
Yeah,
great,
yeah. We do
great.
work primarily in Massachusetts, a little outside, but mostly in Massachusetts. Public buildings. Done some of the buildings right here in Plymouth too.
Oh,
some
great,
schools.
great.
Yeah.
And so do you have family?
My family still mostly lives in Sandwich.
They do? Okay,
Yeah, my
good.
parents still
Good.
live there. Sister, brother, nieces, nephews,
Excellent,
they all live in
excellent,
Sandwich.
yeah. Do they live near the water so you can go visit them?
No,
or-
they don't.
Okay.
No, they're all in Sandwich, so it's
Yeah.
not that far from
Yeah,
here. And
yeah.
I do have one brother that lives up in New
Yeah,
Hampshire.
terrific, great, great. So you're here to talk about a cause that's very near and dear to you. And I'm sure a lot of our viewers don't know about it at all. So why don't you tell us what you were diagnosed with and when that was and how that all came about?
Sure. I have psoriatic disease, which is psoriasis, and about 30% of people, maybe a little more, develop psoriatic arthritis, and I have both. It's an autoimmune disease, so basically what it means is your immune system. If you have psoriasis, your immune system attacks your skin. So that's why when you see people with it, you can see the lesions and the different
Yeah, what
things.
does it look like?
It's many forms. It could be, bumps, like pustular bumps. It could be bright red skin. It could be white rashes. It's very itchy, burns. Some people have, 90% of their body covered with it.
Really?
And there isn't a cure. It's also not contagious at all, which is one of the reasons we do a lot of the advocacy too, is so people know it's not contagious. It's okay for your kids to play. It's systemic. It's something that's unique to yourself, And with the psoriatic arthritis, it's the same thing. Your immune system is attacking your joints. So,
And can you see that or not?
you can only see it if you're. It manifests differently.
Okay.
Like for me, it started on my fingernails, and you get swollen fingers, but there isn't an actual blood test to diagnose it. So it took a very, very long time for me to be diagnosed because my psoriasis wouldn't be flaring the same time as my arthritis, so nobody really put two and two together. They would rule out what I didn't have, but nobody could figure out what I actually had. It actually took almost 15 years for me to be
I was going to say, when did you
diagnosed.
find out you were having issues? I mean,
It started when I was young, It started, and I always figured
like a high school or younger? Or?
in my late 20s.
Okay. And what were you feeling at the time? Or seeing?
Lots of joint pain and
Okay.
swelling in my hands, swelling in my feet. You go to the doctor, they put you on, an ibuprofen type of thing. Back in the beginning, the symptoms were less.
What did they think it was in the beginning?
First, they thought it was just tennis elbow.
Okay.
And I used to be, active a little, and I thought, all right, I ran into the wall one too many times playing, volleyball, or I did something like that. I just figured
sure.
I was paying for what I did in my teens when I hit my early 20s, late 20s, early 30s. Then they thought it might be rheumatoid arthritis, but there is a definitive test for that, and I didn't have it.
Okay.
So, once a year I'd go to a different doctor, and then the psoriasis started. But it was so light that I didn't know what it was.
Was it on your hands?
It started on my scalp.
Is that right? And
So
how did you know that?
I just thought it was dandruff.
Really?
You have long hair.
Yeah.
You wash your hair twice a day. You're not
Yeah.
supposed to, and all that.
Yeah.
So I never thought to tell a doctor.
Yeah.
I just assumed that's what it was.
Yeah.
And that's a big part of the outreach too. Is tell your doctors everything.
Yeah.
they can't treat you if they don't know.
Right.
And that's what was happening to me. I was having it on my nails, but I didn't know that's what it was.
What were your nails looking like? They look nice now.
They're always covered.
Okay.
Lifting, pitting,
Really? Okay.
losing them,
Really?
nails, and toenails. Yeah. And that was the final when I said to the dermatologist one day, well, why do my fingernails keep falling off? And he's like, what do you mean keep? And I said, oh, every few months. And he's like, why didn't you tell me? I said, why didn't you ask me? I didn't know it was a symptom of anything. I just thought it was one of those things. Oh, well,
Yeah,
what's
Jody,
going to
that's
happen?
not typical that toenails or fingernails fall off.
It's not. It's well, no, because when I asked my primary care, and she said, "Oh, I think it's fungus," but they never did a test, you know. And fast forward, this was 20 years ago.
Yeah, yeah.
Today, I don't think that would happen because there's even TV commercials about psoriasis and psoriatic
Yeah, talk about
arthritis
those a
now.
little bit because you watch those. I think it's Cyndi Lauper and some other people you
Yes,
see. And,
yes.
And the commercial looks like, they put this on or they take this, whatever it is, and it seems like it helps clear it up. But it doesn't
There's a
sound
whole
like that
new,
way the way you're talking.
Well, there's a whole new category of drugs called biologics, and new being 15 to 20 years. But
Okay.
when they were new, less people used them. Now they've been out for a little while, and they really are life-changing.
Are they?
They are
Okay.
life-changing. Oh, yes. I mean, when you see these commercials, the one you just mentioned, those are all volunteers with her. A couple of them I know from doing volunteer work out of New York, who were like 90% covered, and then this medication came out, and it clears them almost 100%.
So it is true then.
It is.
Oh, okay.
These are
Wow.
they've been life-changing. I mean, in doing this and traveling around the country, you meet different people that have psoriasis or psoriatic arthritis, and how their lives have changed once they started these biologics. They really, I mean, even with myself, I can see, I can see.
Did it spread more than just your scalp after some time? Or?
It did. It did. It was on my hands, my scalp, my legs.
Oh, and they're pretty clear
stomach.
now.
What I'm on, the medication I'm on now is
Yeah.
probably worked the best of all of them that I've been on in 15 years. Yeah.
That's great.
Yeah.
So talk about, so you've been involved with an organization. Talk about that.
Yeah. Well, psoriatic disease, it's a chronic disease, which means there's no cure, so you have it for your life. So, when you're first diagnosed with psoriasis, you're like, well, I've heard of it, I kind of know what it is, But then when they diagnosed me with psoriatic arthritis, I said, I don't know what that is. I didn't know anybody who had it, so. It started out a little mild, but about 5 years went by, and it was just getting, bad. Now I was starting to get into this biologics, over the, counter things weren't going to work anymore. So I went online and said, there's got to be somebody around here who has this that I can speak with, because you're always wondering, did they try this drug? Is it just me who can't, walk in the morning? I mean.
Was it that? Yeah, I was going to say, what were some of the symptoms that you were saying?
The joint sniff, especially in the morning. So that's like one of the reasons they kind of know that's what it is, because it might get a little better throughout the day.
Okay.
When I am not on an effective treatment, I literally don't have the strength to take the blankets off of myself to get out of bed.
And walk in the morning.
And walk. And, luckily I work, I could wear sweatpants if I had to, or pull on shoes, because there's no way I could.
Yeah, and you were
tie.
working. And you were working
Then
through
I
all
was
this.
working through all this. And luckily I have been working in the same place for a long time, and I have a great employer, and they they watched my demise, I guess you would say, so they knew, and I kept working. I did have to cut back a couple of years ago, so I worked 4 days instead of 5, and I'll never go back, because just sitting in I'm in an office, up and down, it's a busy pace and everything, but I also don't want to stop, because I don't want to just sit there and do nothing.
Right.
Sometimes I tend to overdo it, and that's because I'm afraid if I stop, nothing will move.
So walking around, moving around, it actually helps you.
It kind of gets you moving. Yeah. The more you move, you stretch out, because like I said, hit your joints. For me, it was my knees, my ankles, my wrists, and especially my hands. My hands were the hardest hit by all of it. Yeah. I mean, the dexterity and all that is gone, but. I've been on many different medications. Unfortunately, there's a large percentage of us, I'm not sure what it is, where the efficacy after maybe 6 months just completely goes away. And then you have to wait.
Need to try something else?
To try something else.
Yeah.
And you have to wait to try something else, but there's a whole approval process that comes along with that. So it's not like, Tuesday it didn't work, Wednesday I'm on something new. It's like Tuesday it didn't work, and 3 to 6 months from now I'll finally be on something new. So in between, you lose a little bit of that protection from those drugs, because they not only help your symptoms, they prevent further joint damage. That's one of the biggest things.
So you volunteer for an organization. What's the name of your organization?
So I went online and I found the National Psoriasis Foundation.
Okay.
That was about 8 years, I want to say. They're out of Portland, Oregon, but they have bases in almost all the states. So New York, they have a big office there that handles this area. So in the beginning, I did like an annual walk. They did a walk once a year as a fundraiser.
Down in New York?
No, it was actually in Boston. We had it in Boston. They just stopped it a couple of years ago. We had it at right in South Boston, right along the riverfront there. And one year it was in Cambridge, near behind MIT. So I started to get involved that way, because that was the only thing they had really in this area at the time. They used to, and they would do it every now and then, a couple programs where they'd come in with doctors and talk to patients. So it gave me this network now of people, because once you become in it, you start talking to people from all over the country on a daily basis. So you end up knowing these people intimately, because it's a pretty intimate disease, and it just gave you a little bit of strength to finally say, okay, if I'm feeling this, is anybody else feeling it? And then in 2016, the Psoriasis Foundation came to me and asked me if I would like to join them in Washington, D.C. for their annual fly-in Capitol Hill Day, where they go in, they bring some advocates and some researchers and doctors, and they go to Capitol Hill in Washington, and whatever funding they're looking for, any bills that may be relative to psoriatic disease, and go around and meet with all the different senators and representatives. So that was my first dipping my toe into advocacy, and it was quite an experience. I never really had anything to do with politics, so to say, and it was great. And the first day I was there, I mean, they say that it doesn't always happen that you get to meet with both senators and your representative in person while you're in Washington.
That's so true.
Yeah, it just kind of was a freak thing. One of them was having a meet and greet, so I got to meet them, and the other two just happened. We got meetings with them, and at that time we were looking for some funding for research, and all three of them signed on to the letter for that. And then the next day we went to the FDA. They had these hearings.
It's the Federal Drug Administration.
Right, the Federal Drug Administration. They had, back in 2016, I believe the legislature said, they had to meet with 17 different groups and speak to patients, because they never spoke to patients before when they were approving drugs. And they said, you need to speak. And so psoriasis ended up being, it was 17 then, I think they increased it to 25. So the day we were there, it happened to be psoriasis. And there was a couple hundred of us there, plus probably another 200 virtually on screens.
That many.
Just talking about their life with psoriasis. And it was very powerful. And actually the FDA came out and said that they now change how they approve drugs based on all those different hearings and listening to things that patients said that they said they had never heard before. So I was flying home from Washington, and I was like, this is really cool. I have this disease, and people were listening to me and responding, and I said, I kind of like this. And that's how I got into advocacy. They said most people get in for two reasons. Either somebody themselves or someone they love are affected by a disease, or they're asked. With me, it was both.
Yeah, right.
I was asked to join, and next thing I know, I'm on emails, and I'm an advocate for the Psoriasis Foundation.
What keeps you motivated to stay involved?
I think it is the response. The fact that, you have this disease, it's chronic, there's no cure. And, sometimes you just sit home and think, well, someone will do something about it, a cure will come out, and then you realize, well, geez, I can do something about it. And so the fact that every time I go, the response, I mean, you don't always get what you ask for, but people listen to you, and it's a voice that you wouldn't have just sitting home watching TV. Even writing letters or emails, that is very effective too, so do that. So, plus, we still don't have a cure. So until there's a cure,
you keep going.
You can't really sit back. Or, a cure, and I mean, the funding needs to be committed. New treatments have to be, because there are a limited amount of treatments for especially psoriatic arthritis. So you have to make sure that there's funding and research to continue to get, each one gets a little better. There's a lot of side effects, as with most drugs, so you hope that they'll work on drugs with less side effects. And there's comorbidities that come with these diseases. When you have psoriatic disease, you have a higher risk of heart disease, diabetes, all these other diseases. So, trying to find ways to prevent that, medicines that can help prevent those as well. So that's what keeps me going. Plus, like I said, we just recent trip to Washington, met with my representative 3 days later. Got the email. He co-sponsored the bill. I mean,
that's great.
It's effective.
Yeah. It really is, and that's why I applaud you for what you're doing. I mean, you could just sit back and say, okay, I got the disease, let other people work on it, but you getting involved and helping out, which is one of the reasons I really wanted you to be on the show to kind of talk about that, because it's inspiring to people. If you do have something, people should get involved. It's okay. Tell me what are the numbers like in Massachusetts? Have you talked to other people now?
Countrywide, there's 8 million Americans with psoriatic disease.
Wow, okay.
So in the state of Massachusetts, it's just over 177,000.
Okay.
So I was like, okay. So I looked. It's just a little bit less than the population of the city of Worcester. So just imagine that whole entire. It's a lot of people.
Yeah.
And that's what because there's some people that don't seek treatment.
Sure.
That don't seek treatment.
Back in August of 2017, the governor signed a proclamation. Talk about that.
I met with Senator DiMacedo, and I went to the State House, so the story leads up to it. I said, I'm going and asking all these legislators to sign stuff. I'm going to go see what they do. So I dragged one of my friends up there for the day, and we did the tour, and went over to the senator's office, and he wasn't in, but his staff was there, and a couple other staff members from other offices. And I said, what do people do for advocates? And they said, they write resolutions. So I said, what is that? So they told me what it was, gave me a couple examples. So we sat down and we wrote a resolution explaining exactly what psoriasis was, the impact, the numbers, the research, and we wrote a resolution with the senator's office, and they voted on it and put it in. So August of 2017 was Psoriasis Awareness Month.
That's a big deal.
Yeah, it was. It was really exciting, really fun, and again, just me, how busy they are, the amount of time that he donated, that his legal staff donated, dedicated to helping me make sure it was written exactly the way it should be, so that it would, get voted through the first time, which it did, and it was. And I was really happy about that. And in that same meeting, they said, some people get the Zachem Bridge in Boston lit up. I said, how do I do that? So through a bunch of different emails, you find the right person. So that same month, one day, we had the bridge lit up blue and orange. We tried to get a little bit of television. I think one newspaper mentioned it as psoriasis awareness. For that. So that was kind of.
What does that mean to the organization to have that awareness like that?
It's especially a disease like psoriasis that now, like I said, a little bit people know, but they're not sure what it is, especially, when they're not based in Massachusetts. So to have all of a sudden their name, splashed on the newspaper or a bridge lit up to it. That same night we were walking around Boston, and I ran into Mayor Walsh from Boston, and I said, I'm here for the bridge, and his aide was there, information, light City Hall up too. So in October, which was World Psoriasis Day, October 29th is World Psoriasis Day, I got a hold of his office, and they lit City Hall up blue and orange in recognition of World Psoriasis Day. So,
Good for you.
yeah, so it just,
Good for you.
it brings, because everybody's always wondering what the color is. Why are the colors that color, and different nonprofits, if you contact the right person, you can get them to flip the switch. It's a lot easier nowadays. There's not anybody up there rigging lights. They just hit a button.
Right.
So,
Why those colors?
blue and orange are their colors that they've picked. I think orange is psoriasis and blue might be arthritis.
Yeah,
It's like
okay. That makes sense.
it's like a combination of the two.
Yeah.
The two colors. Yeah.
Now, were you recently testifying at the State House too?
I did.
What were you testifying about?
That was for a bill called Step Therapy, Fail First.
Let's talk about that.
When you reach a lot of these medications, like I was speaking of the biologics and everything, they're expensive. They're extremely expensive. But they're effective. And there's a lot that aren't as effective. So sometimes when you sit in your doctor and you come up with a treatment you want to use, you submit it to the insurance company and they say, no, you have to fail first on these presumably less expensive drugs before you can use the drug that you think will work. So this bill tries to put guardrails in place so that they can't make people use drugs that are going to be ineffective, or in some cases you may have even used that drug before, because if you switch employers and you switch insurance companies, it doesn't matter that you've already failed miserably with another one. You have to take the drugs over again and start from a person who knows if something's not working, it's not working. You know it's not working. Every time something doesn't work, another joint in mine goes out of place, and it doesn't come back. So this bill puts guardrails in place, limiting, emergency issues. They're just going to approve it. Or if you change employers and you have something that already works, you don't have to redo it again. And also the time, make it more timely, because it can take. I've had months waiting to get an answer on a medication.
Waiting for the insurance company.
Yeah. Because every insurance company has their own way. With mine, it's you can submit 3 times. So my rheumatologist would submit and they deny and say, we wanted to try this, and he'd submit and say, she already tried that and it didn't work, and then they'd say okay, and then sometimes they'd say no. So a third time he would go back and ask for a peer-to-peer review with another rheumatologist. Won't always get a rheumatologist. Sometimes they'll get a specialty doctor that isn't even familiar with the drug. So they're trying to just circumvent that and say, look, answers within 48 hours, 72 hours, and so that the person can go on to the next medication. Because if it does fail, some of these take 3 to 6 months to take effectiveness to see if they fully work. So if you're on something that they want you to try that you don't think is going to work, and you're on it for 6 months, that means for 6 months you really have had no protection. Then you probably have to wait another month to start a new one if you get the approval. Then it could be 3 to 6 months. So you could be a year without an effective drug.
You keep saying no protection. What does that mean? No protection?
These medicines not only help you function for the pain, but they protect you from getting further joint damage. Speaking to the psoriatic arthritis, but even with the psoriasis, you could just, your hair falls out. There's just a lot of nothing's happening. So you're just sore. There's nothing preventing it. So that's what I mean by protections. There's no protection. These the medicines help and they protect you from getting further joint damage, and that type of thing.
So what are some of the next things that the organization is looking at and you're working on?
Well, right now we're still working on the step therapy. Because
matter of fact, you came before the committee I sit on, Healthcare Finance. You did a terrific job.
Thank you. I get
Terrific
very
job.
emotional,
Yeah.
especially when the people before me speak, especially the
It was.
teenagers.
Yeah, it really was.
It was great to have the support of everybody on the panel. But that's still right now one of the biggest things we're working on, because 27 states to date have passed it. So we're trying to get Massachusetts to get on the bandwagon. And we have a federal bill, the same bill federally as well, and that has a lot of support right now. I think in the House bill it has 110 co-sponsors. In the Senate one, which just went out at the end of September, I think has 10, which is a lot more than we've had in the past. So we're hoping to. Also, we're working on prior authorization, getting that changed which I was explaining to you, if you go in and you're trying to get approved for a drug,
Yeah.
to make it go a little bit quicker so that people aren't, and then when your year is up and it has to be renewed again, to make that go a little quicker so that you don't have to wait. Also, cost of care is a big issue that we're always working on. That's probably first and foremost, and a lot of, I was the past co-chair of the Psoriasis Foundation's Eastern advocacy, and then last year they asked me to move up to the federal, so now I'm on their federal advocacy team. So, the cost of care is really big, especially around the country. I mean, I know a lot of people don't have health insurance, but the health insurance I have, at least, or people I know, is good health insurance. In other parts of the country, it's not as effective. You know, they have huge co-pays of $10,000 or more, which you can hit one dose of something.
So people that are out there that are watching and have this disease, what's your pitch to try to get them involved?
Well, I think everyone should be involved. First of all,
Sure.
I believe strongly in volunteerism anyways. I think everybody should volunteer. I'm allowed to do it because I have an employer that believes totally in community service and says, you know, which I think all employees too.
So your employer allows your time to go do this?
He allows me time, and it's not, you know, outside of my, you know, vacation or whatever, he allows me time to do what I have to do because he believes, you know, that's how you get things done. You know, citizens have to get involved. If anybody has psoriasis or psoriatic arthritis, I would strongly recommend they get involved with the Psoriasis Foundation. It's www.psoriasis.org. You can volunteer, you can become an advocate, you can donate. They have a patient navigation center, which is just phenomenal. If you're newly diagnosed and you say, I don't know what to do, I don't even know who to go for a doctor, and you contact them, they will tell you all the doctors in your area, you know, they'll put you in touch with people who have used those doctors if you want references to see, you know, because, you know, some people like certain doctors, some people don't like other doctors. They'll help you try to sort out the treatments, you know, what each one means and what side effects are for each one. So I would strongly suggest anybody who has psoriasis getting involved, getting, you know, in touch with them.
And donating, because that's obviously, like you said, research.
And donate,
is
donating.
Yeah.
Research is, I mean, there's been some great advances. So definitely the research dollars that go into research, and, you know, the physicians that dedicate themselves to rheumatology are great.
Yeah, well, Jody, we're out of time now, but I want to thank you so much for, not just for joining me, for what you're doing out there and getting involved and hopefully get other people involved. Again, it's psoriasis.org.
Psoriasis.org.
To go donate, to volunteer, or get involved advocating with you.
Yes.
So thank you again.
Yes, thank you. Thank you for having me.
We want to thank you all for watching today's show. We hope you enjoyed it. We hope you felt that it was informative. And if you have psoriasis, again, psoriasis.org is the place to go to get all the information. I want to thank Ben and Mark for a great job again, and all the folks here at PAC TV. We'll see you next time on State Matters.